Hey there, history buffs. Welcome back to your... Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of ancient economies. From bartering to early trade routes, ancient societies had some surprising ways of making their economies tick. So, how did people in ancient times buy and sell things? How did they manage resources and wealth? Let's find out. Let's start by looking at one of the most basic systems: barter. Before money as we know it, people exchanged goods and services directly. If you were a farmer with a surplus of wheat but needed a new tool, you could trade your wheat for, say, a plow. But of course, there's a catch. Bartering only works when both people have something the other wants, and that's not always easy. Over time, this became a bit inefficient, so people started to look for a more standardized way to trade. Enter money. And it wasn't just paper bills or coins like we think of today. Ancient civilizations used all kinds of items as money, things like shells, cattle, grains, or even large stones. For example, in ancient Mesopotamia, they used silver bars or even barley as currency. And in ancient China, they used cowrie shells as a form of money for thousands of years. But then came coins. The first metal coins were minted in Lydia, modern-day Turkey, around the 7th century BCE. The invention of coins was a game-changer. Not only were they more durable, but they also made trade faster and more efficient. But money wasn't the only factor driving ancient economies. Trade networks were incredibly important. Whether by land or sea, civilizations like the Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans created vast trade routes that stretched across continents. These networks connected distant regions, allowing them to exchange everything from spices and silk to precious metals and exotic animals. One of the most famous examples is the Silk Road, which connected China with Europe and the Middle East. This trade route was not just about goods, it was also a way for cultures to exchange ideas, technologies, and even religions. Imagine a Roman merchant traveling all the way from the Mediterranean to China. That's some serious mileage. But let's not forget about the role of agriculture. Most ancient economies were built on farming, and how well a society managed its agricultural resources was key to its prosperity. Ancient civilizations often relied on the flow of rivers like the Nile in Egypt, the Tigris and Euphrates in Mesopotamia, or the Indus River in India to irrigate their crops and create stable food supplies. Then, of course, there were ancient empires like Rome, which had an economy built on conquest and exploitation. Slavery played a major role in their system, with enslaved people doing much of the manual labor, especially in agriculture, mining, and construction. The Romans were able to use the resources of the lands they conquered to fuel their economy and support their massive empire. And speaking of labor, ancient economies weren't all about markets and trade. Craftsmanship was highly valued. In places like ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, skilled artisans created everything from pottery to metalwork, textiles, and jewelry. Their products weren't just for local consumption. They were often traded or used to symbolize wealth and power. Speaking of power, ancient economies were often deeply intertwined with politics. Kings, emperors, and high priests controlled wealth, often through taxation or religious tithe systems. In ancient Egypt, for instance, the pharaoh owned all the land and could command labor and produce from the people. And in the Roman Empire, taxes were used not only to fund the military but also to build infrastructure like roads, aqueducts, and public buildings. Trade, agriculture, labor, and taxes. These were the main pillars of ancient economies. But what really makes ancient economies fascinating is how they set the foundation for the systems we use today. The ideas of currency, trade routes, and even taxes have evolved, but the basic concepts are still at the heart of modern economies. So, while the ancient economy might seem distant, in many ways, it's not so different from the economy we live in today. It's all about the flow of goods, services, and resources. That's all for today's dive into the world of ancient economies. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more historical deep dives. Let me know in the comments what part of ancient economies you find the most interesting. Until next time, Keep exploring the past, and who knows what you'll discover about the present.